There are two major methylation defects, MTHFR and COMT. They're called SNPs or SNPs. And there's a very popular book out there called 30 Genes about it. There's tons of content about methylation. And honestly, the great majority of it is centered around a huge push for supplementation. And that's the wrong way to look at it. And because methylation is by default connected to your body's ability to use B vitamins, your body's requirement for B vitamins, and for their active version of them, let's say, then I also want to touch on folate and how folate is affected by ultraviolet light and this BS push for leafy greens. Also, basically, I'm just going to connect all of those, okay, in this video. So my name is Emmanuelle Arbani. I'm a health and nutrition practitioner. I've helped over 200 men and women just guide them to using nature to significantly improve the chronic conditions that they were facing, or health issues, however you choose to call them. Okay, so methylation, first of all, is a deuterium story. If I were to sum it up in one sentence, that's what I would say. Methylation is a deuterium story. And this isn't like me repeating what someone else has done. It's me gone back to read a ton of research on the mechanisms behind methylation and how isotopes, or heavy versions of, molecules, atoms, like heavy version of hydrogen, heavy version of carbon, how the heavy version affects, but especially hydrogen because of how ubiquitous or how common or prolific it is in your body, affects methylation. Okay, so before I get into methylation more deeply, I want to first address the folate and ultraviolet light nonsense. Folate isn't destroyed by UV light. Folic acid, the one you find in a fake supplement, is destroyed by UVA light, whereas folate is hardly destroyed at all by ultraviolet light because its peak absorption sits in a portion of ultraviolet B light that barely makes it past the ozone layer. And the darker your skin is, the more of a tan you build up, the less the folate can even be touched by ultraviolet light. Now, there is a minute effect, and honestly, this is the reason why nature has designed for higher folate foods to happen when ultraviolet light is high. Also, having too much folate can actually screw you up. It is not a good thing, even the natural one. I'm not going to get into that in that video though. If you want me to do a whole video on that, just let me know. So full spectrum sunlight is not contributing to methylation problems. It actually improves methylation problems. So we're tying these two, remember, because folate is critical for methylation. So are B vitamins in general. Full methylation issues are exacerbated extremely by modern day stressors, because our modern day stressors cause heavier isotopes. They're like heavy hydrogen, heavy atoms to enter into our body in a way that nature would have never selected for. I want to bring something really interesting I recently learned to your attention. Did you know that high quality essential oil brands will verify the integrity of an essential oil by actually doing isotopic testing? They want to know how much deuterium and how much protium is in their essential oils, and they're testing something called chirality, which is like, think of it as like molecules have not all molecules, a lot of molecules are chiral, which means they're like they're twirled. Think of like Fibonacci spiral, right? But nature has a preference to whether it twirls to the right or to the left. And this is a signature of natural compounds. And this is also tested for. This means that nature wants you to use more light than heavy isotopes, right? So nature prefers protium over deuterium in most scenarios. There are some scenarios, because remember, you need deuterium to live. You can't have deuterium levels be 0 or you'd be dead, right? So it has to be in the right quantities, but nature has a preference for light molecules. Whereas what we know from studies, and I'm not talking about like human studies or whatever, but what we know from studying supplements is that supplements, whether naturally extracted or artificially created, have heavy isotopes in them. They're on the heavy side, and their chirality changes. Let's call it like their twirliness, okay? They've got an ugly Fibonacci sequence, and nature chooses the pretty one. I'm literally just saying this to give you an easy example. This is so important. Today, we are so heavily exposed to processed foods, supplements, drinks, storage things, foods that do not come from where we live, which introduce additional heavy atoms that nature would have only created had we, say, been in the tropics or subtropics. But if you're not there, you're not supposed to be eating these things. Never mind the fact that our modern environment is screwing with all of our circadian signals, right? We're exposed to light, which makes this important coordination of all of the clocks in our body. The brain connected to your organ clocks, connected to your clock gene, clock proteins, signaling proteins, and the things that travel back and forth, and everything connected to that, like leptin, because leptin is so important to circadian signaling. All of this is getting completely screwed up. This indirectly increases further the amount of heavy isotopes, and let's call them ugly Fibonacci sequences, that are happening inside your body. It doesn't look anything like your body was designed to anymore. And methylation requires lighter isotopes for it to function. So while you drinking heavy water or high deuterium water, like extremely high deuterium water, isn't automatically and immediately going to result in your methylation going haywire, but a repeat, constant, chronic stress of exposure to all of these things that are negatively affecting all the factors that are required for proper methylation: circadian signaling, proper light signals, proper magnetic signals, proper cold and hot signals, temperature signals, the foods being reflected from where we live. All these things that affect proper methylation have completely gone the wrong way. So obviously, your methylation is going to be negatively affected. Now, let's look at evolution for a second. Evolution never eliminated these problems such as MTHFR and COMT because they're irrelevant if you live outdoors in a nomadic style life where you're constantly outside in the sun, grounded, etc. They're irrelevant if you eat constantly only what grows around you, what you hunt, what you gather, what you grow. It's irrelevant. And when you try to supplement your way to better methylation, first of all, it's ridiculously expensive. By the time you're done adding all of these things, you've not only, perhaps in some cases, temporarily made yourself feel better, but now you've increased all of the mitochondrial problems that you had because you've added more issues to the plate. You've added more of these problems that dysregulate your methylation in your body. And instead, if you actually just use nature to align your clocks, you're going to have a much more lasting improvement on your methylation and save yourself a bunch of money. When you watch all these videos, maybe they're YouTube videos, maybe they're short form content like Instagram or whatever, on methylation and how they describe it, they're basically showing you the leg of the elephant without considering the head. All this talk about insulin and mitochondria, without ever mentioning leptin and circadian signals is ridiculous because it's like the chicken and the egg. You cannot make an egg without a chicken. And I don't mean it in like the traditional sense of the expression, but you can't have an egg without first having a chicken. And the chicken is sunrise. The chicken is curating your home environment. So it's a sanctuary. The chicken is getting all of your body clocks to be coordinated with each other, building up your sun exposure, improving the magnetic field that you're surrounded by, or that you live in, or rather. All these things, that's the chicken. The egg is what's happening to insulin and what's happening to magnesium, B12, all your B vitamins, folate, etc. This is the egg, or the leg of the elephant. It's incomplete. So it's not that what these people are saying is necessarily entirely incorrect. It's incomplete. They're not considering what's happening upstream of that. And this is why, you watch my channel, really, right? Because we want to fix what's coming upstream. And if you also watch these videos, they're often going to mention that I need water. Methylation problems are connected to poor clearance of heavy metals. Okay. And that ties directly into all of the other fundamentals, because your ability to sequester, eliminate, and detox heavy metals is heavily reliant on circadian signals, on building up your tan and sun exposure, on not being fried by a really high non-native EMF environment, excess artificial light, all of these things. I'm not going to get into that in too detail because that is another video coming. I have not made that video yet because I'm reading Melanin, the Master Molecule. And I actually want to finish that book because I think it'll give my whole thing about melanin and heavy metal detox a much more complete spin and story for you guys. So just sum it all up. You want to address your methylation issues by looking upstream. You want to fix the elephant's brain for the reason why his leg is twitching and not put a cast on his leg so it's straight. I hope you guys like my silly examples, but this is really what it is. If you are not familiar with deuterium, I've linked my video on deuterium depletion, and that's in the end screen. So I'm going to see you there.